Support for WUWM podcasts comes from Potawatomi Casino Hotel Milwaukee, home to 24/7 excitement, dining, and an on-site hotel at 1721 West Canal Street. More information at potawatomi.com.
Lake Effect brings you conversations about what's happening in Milwaukee and the people, places, and organizations that shape our community. This is Lake Effect Spotlight from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.
The federal government shutdown has now stretched on for more than a month, and money for some vital services is not being distributed. In Milwaukee County, 125,000 children benefited from food assistance at some point this last year. 2 Head Start childcare programs in our state are now poised to close their doors this month. Jennie Mauer is the executive director of Wisconsin's Head Start Association. She joins WUWM education reporter Katherine Kokal to talk about the challenges facing Wisconsin's most vulnerable families.
So I want to start by just introducing people to what Head Start is if they're not familiar or if they've never used the services before. How would you describe Head Start and the impact it has in Wisconsin?
Sure. So Head Start is one of our nation's oldest anti-poverty programs. Actually, this past year, Head Start celebrated its 60th birthday, and Head Start provides services across all the counties in our state. And it provides a number of different services, but I think the program component that is probably most familiar to folks is providing services to 3 to 5-year-olds and their families. And that looks like center-based childcare. And so in addition to those kiddos getting amazing center-based childcare, there are comprehensive services that really wrap around and support the family on goals that they're working on for themselves and that they identify with the support of Head Start staff. So that might be working on finding more stable housing or different jobs or job training opportunities, and then connecting families to things like needed medical or dental care. So really just serving as that launch pad to success for a family. Another thing I really like to point out to folks who maybe aren't familiar with Head Start is that Head Start families are families that are our friends and neighbors. The majority of Head Start families are working parents, so they are working alongside us in our communities. They're working in retail and hospitality. They're working in our hospitals. So they're really a part of our communities. And Head Start is serving roughly 15,000 children and their families across our state. And Head Start is really an economic driver within our community. So not only is Head Start serving children and helping their parents get to work, but Head Start is also employing thousands of staff across our state and buying goods and services in our communities, both in our urban centers in Wisconsin, but also in our rural communities.
And it's worth noting, too, that Head Start services are provided to families for free if they qualify. And so there are income limits that allow a family to qualify. I believe for a family of 4 this year, that was around $32,000. Does that sound right?
Yep, that sounds about right. So there are specific eligibility requirements set forth by the federal government, including the federal poverty guidelines, as well as if a family is eligible for SNAP or food share, as it's called in Wisconsin, a family can be deemed eligible for Head Start through those requirements. There are also a few other eligibility options, ways that families can be deemed eligible for Head Start. But the poverty guidelines or food share are the most common ways that families are deemed eligible for Head Start. And all the Head Start services are free. And it's really serving as that economic springboard to success for so many families in our state.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really helpful explanation. I was actually just looking up this morning. There are about 120,000 kids in Milwaukee County specifically that received food share or our state's version of SNAP food assistance benefits last year. So that is actually just over half of all of the children in Milwaukee County. So, that kind of paints a picture of how much poverty we are dealing with in our county.
certainly not all of the children who access food share are eligible because of their age are not eligible for Head Start. That is one way that a family could qualify for Head Start if they're age eligible.
Right. So we are now facing a situation where two Head Start centers in Wisconsin are at risk of closing due to the federal government shutdown. Can you explain what that means for almost 300 students?
Yeah, so what that means, it's a little different for each of these two programs. So I can talk first about Southwest CAP, so in the southwest part of the state. So for that program, they have made the difficult decision that starting the first week of November, they are going to have to shut down their 9 preschool or Head Start classrooms if this government shutdown continues. So each program has a unique set of budgetary constraints. And as they look at their program situation, they are going to shut down those services until the government reopens. So what that means, first and foremost for children, is that they will not have the program to go to. So that means they won't have that safe and nurturing environment to attend. And often what we know is that that's where they're getting their meals, they're getting their teeth brushed, they're getting those extra hugs and cuddles. And, the kind of secondary impact is that those parents, I started off saying that what we know about Head Start parents is that the majority of those parents are working parents in our communities. And I'm a working parent myself, and I know that if my children's childcare or school is shut down, I really struggle to get my work obligations done. And that's the same for Head Start parents. So those parents will be forced to make really difficult choices.
I've heard people say that the people most impacted by a federal government shutdown are children. Do you agree with that?
I would certainly agree with that statement. I think this government shutdown is really going to hurt children. Children will not have, as I said, a safe place to go. And what we know is that children, especially young children, they can't watch themselves. And we know that children are, thousands and thousands of children are going to suffer in our state with a pause in SNAP benefits. So not just thinking about the impacts on these 2 Head Start programs, it's really going to be catastrophic. But I really think I want to encourage all of your listeners to be thinking about, our entire communities and what this will mean for all of us, because we're all connected, and the ripple effects that this will have across our communities, because children exist in families and families exist in communities, and we're really all connected. So I encourage everyone to think that this not only affects someone else's children, but it affects our entire communities.
That speaks to the point that you're making, that the children who are in Head Start programs have parents who are working in our hospitals and working in hospitality and working in all of these industries that desperately need people to show up for work next week and the weeks after. So how can someone who's listening to this help?
Yeah, I think that there are lots of different ways that folks can be helping. I think that there are lots of ways that folks are activating to support folks in their community. I think that I'm seeing a lot of activation about food drives in communities, because I think right now that's going to be a really crushing need. Had lots of discussion with programs that were really worried that kids and their parents are going to go hungry. So I would really encourage folks to reach out to their local food banks, their faith communities that are mobilizing to support the crushing food scarcity that is coming towards us. And I would really encourage folks to reach out to their legislators and let their legislators know that kids and families are struggling right now, and that working families are struggling, and that we can't think about these issues in isolation, and that how difficult it is to be a low-income working family in Wisconsin, and encourage legislators to think about the ripple effects across our communities. I think that legislators need a dose of reality of what it's like to be a low-income working parent in Wisconsin. And I think that we need to do a better job of communicating what it's like to live in Ashland, Wisconsin, what it's like to live in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, what it's like to live in the city of Milwaukee. And I think we need to let our legislators know they work for us and to communicate with them what it's like to just try to take care of your kids, whether it's in a government shutdown or what it's like in the middle of the summer. We need to let them know how hard folks are working to care for their kids and families, and that Washington needs to do a better job of paving the way for hardworking families in Wisconsin.
Jennie Mauer is the executive director of Wisconsin's Head Start Association. She spoke with WUWM education reporter Katherine Kokal. You can find more coverage about the impact the federal government shutdown is having in Wisconsin at WUWM.com.
You can find more interviews like this one by visiting WUWM.com/Lake Effect. And while you're there, subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast.